In this Baldur's Gate 3 video, I want to give you guys my top 5 tips for character creation, how to get off to a good start in Baldur's Gate 3 by making a strong character. There are a lot of people playing this game right now, a lot of new players having picked it up on sale a little bit over the break, or maybe they just had money from Christmas or the holidays, etc. So I want to give those players a good start to this game if they're having difficulty. So the first and probably most important tip that I would give to a new player or someone who's maybe making a new character because they've been struggling is choose your class first. The way character creation works in Baldur's Gate 3 now, it asks you to select your race first before choosing your class. And this is kind of backwards in my opinion if you're talking about min-maxing. And that's because a lot of the things you gain from races are going to be useless on certain classes. For instance, if a race gives you, weapon proficiencies in certain weapons, but the class that you have already has those weapon proficiencies, then that's kind of wasted. So my advice would be choose your class first, skip add to class, and choose what you want to play. And something kind of piggybacking off this, and not a separate point, but kind of a tangent to this point, is that if you're someone who likes handling the dialogue on your main character, on the character that you're going to be playing, I highly recommend choosing either a paladin, sorcerer, warlock, bard, or rogue, because those are like the 5 best classes for this in Baldur's Gate 3. So if you like to handle the dialogue yourself, make sure you're selecting one of those classes. If you don't mind if another character in the party does it, then you don't need to choose one of those. And you can still choose one of those and not handle the dialogue as well. So next obvious point is if you have selected your class, or once you've selected your class, then go back and select your race and try and pick a race that has racial features that benefit your playstyle. Now, obviously, I'm talking about from a min-maxing perspective here. If you're role-playing, you're going to pick whatever you want. You're probably not watching this guide. But if you're talking about min-maxing, you want to try and select a race that's going to give you things that your class doesn't give you, or maybe it augments the playstyle of your class. For instance, if you're planning on playing a melee character, half-orc is not a bad choice because it gives you extra damage on your critical hits with melee attacks. So if you're playing melee, that makes a lot of sense for you to potentially select a half-orc. However, if you plan to play a ranged character, or maybe you're planning to play a mage of some kind, that's not really going to benefit you. So you want to take a look at these bonuses and try and select things that are going to help you. And another example of this is, for instance, maybe you chose fighter for your class. So you have weapon proficiency and armor proficiency and everything in the game, and you choose elf. Well, elf gives you some very specific weapon proficiencies that you already have from fighter. These don't add together to give you an even better weapon proficiency. They simply, you're just wasted that benefit from your race. So you might want to choose a different race if you're talking about min-maxing, maybe something that doesn't have anything to do with weapon or armor proficiencies, since you'd have tons of those from fighter already. And now the next point is about ability scores, and you want to make sure that the ability scores of your character are even numbers when possible for each ability. And there are maybe some exceptions to this that I don't want to go into in this video, but if you're just talking about what makes the most sense during character creation, this is very important, because if you have 17 strength, for instance, you don't have any more benefit than if you had 16 strength. So there's no point in spending those points during character creation into 17 strength if you're not going to get anything out of it. And this is really particularly true in Baldur's Gate because you can respec your character. Because you can respec your character, if you start the beginning of the game as optimized as possible, and then you come across a piece of gear that then doesn't really benefit you because you didn't start off differently, you can just go respec your character and change your ability scores to take advantage of that piece of gear. So if it gives you +1 strength, you can set your strength up to 17 when you respec, so that would then go to 18 and you would take advantage of it. So there's not really any reason to play unoptimized for stretches of the game when you can always re-optimize your character essentially whenever you want. And sort of a tangent at this point is that you should probably aim for 16 in your main ability for during character creation. So if you're a spellcaster, whatever your spellcasting ability is, if it's wisdom, it would be wisdom. If it's intelligence, it'd be intelligence. If it was charisma, it'd be charisma, etc. And you can look at your character or the class of your character when you're on the class screen, and it'll show you the primary ability of that class. You want to probably bump that down to 16. And then again, if you find a piece of gear that would, bump it up +1 while you have it equipped, you can go and respec your character and then set it up to 17. This will allow you to put those extra points into something else early on in character creation that will make your character stronger until you, acquire that piece of gear. And I also highly recommend that you have at least 14 constitution on every character you make. This will make sure they have a decent amount of HP. 16 is better if you can get to it, but you want at least 14. If you're playing like a frontlines character, you should probably get 16. You can probably make do with 14 on ranged characters, but 16 is even better than 14 when possible. And the next point is that you shouldn't neglect dexterity on your character. Even if you're not playing a dexterity-focused character, maybe you're playing a spellcaster, or maybe you're playing a melee character that focuses on strength, Dexterity is still an important ability to focus on, or at least have some of, for just about every character. Dexterity improves your armor class if you're wearing light or medium armor. It doesn't do anything for you if you're wearing heavy armor. It gives you improved initiative, meaning that you get to go sooner in combat. It'll improve your turn order. And remember that the turn order, once is determined, stays that turn order throughout combat. So the higher you are in the turn order, the faster you're going to go every round. And the faster you can kill enemies or CC them or whatever, the less effect they're going to have on you. So having high initiative on your characters is really important, and Dexterity can add to that. Dexterity also helps prevent you from being shoved. A lot of hostile melee enemies will try and shove you, so that's really nice. It also helps protect you against a lot of AoE hostile spells. A lot of those spells will target your Dexterity, and you'll have to make a saving throw using your Dexterity. So that's really good, and that can reduce that damage in half if you save, or maybe it reduces it completely, so that's really good. And Dexterity also increases your hit chance and damage with finesse and ranged weapons. Not every character uses finesse weapons. It's probably the minority of characters that do, but just about every character has some ranged weapon in there. So that can benefit a lot of characters, particularly early on in the game before, like maybe some spellcasters have a lot of spell slots. Maybe they're using a ranged weapon to save some spell slots in combat when they really don't need to cast a spell. And the last point is try to select skills when you're going through your skills, which is like below abilities. It's in a very weird place. Try and select skills that match your abilities. That's to say, for instance, if you have low intelligence on your character, you're not a character that really needs intelligence on it, so you don't have much, it's probably not a great idea to take history. History falls under intelligence, so even though you might have proficiency in history because you selected it, maybe you don't gain as much to it as a high intelligence character would. So, why have that character focus on something when another character could do it better is kind of my philosophy here. So take a look at what your abilities are and what skills fall under those abilities, and try and prioritize abilities that, fall under the ones that you have a lot of ability score up. That will make sure that your character is efficient and it's doing things well that it can do well, the best they can. So that wraps up our video on top 5 character creation tips for BG3. I will have some tips for other classes. We're still working on our multi-classing guides. Didn't have time to get one out this week, but I did want to get a BG3 guide out because there are a lot of new players playing the game right now. But we will continue with the multi-classing guides next week, so stay tuned for those. And also, if you guys have other tips for character creation, maybe that I didn't mention, leave them in the comments as well for other new players so they can get the help that they need.